sa Kababayan Today. Ako po si G. Tanji. If you're just joining us, binabasa po natin ang librong Filipinotown Voices from Los Angeles. At kasama natin ang isa sa tatlong editors. Nandito po, she was conceived rather in Baguio. Si Carlene Sobrino Bonnivier was born and grew up in the multicultural world of downtown Los Angeles, thinking as a child that she was half American and half Catholic. When she was 15, she almost went to juvenile hall, but decided on a better course, and since then has trekked the Himalayas, worked in the White House press office, published 3 novels, very impressive, and edited this anthology, Filipinotown. She is here to represent one of the writers, and we're having her for the second time here on our show. Carlene, it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It is a real pleasure to be here.
The last time you were here, we couldn't help but shed a couple of tears.
I know.
But it was such a touching opportunity to share these stories with our kababayan. So thank you for representing some of the writers that couldn't be here today and reading their stories for us.
All right. I'll tell you a little about Valerie. I never met her, but she grew up right in my neighborhood, and she called herself a Temple Street brat.
What is a Temple Street brat?
Well, it's sort of what Greg Englis was talking about earlier, where we didn't have the term latchkey kid, but we all sort of grew ourselves, like Topsy, and we're mostly unsupervised because everybody was working all the time. And all our parents were at work, but we did all right. Sure, we got into some trouble, but nothing like you'd expect.
Right.
You know, because now and then there'd be people who would say, you know, it's time to go home, it's twilight, you're going to get in trouble. But it seemed also to be a neighborhood where you could walk into anybody's house, and somebody there were a lot of Mexicans in the neighborhood, and they had the greatest food, and they'd hand you a burrito with fresh beans. Oh, my God. I've never tasted anything so good.
Okay.
All
well,
right.
Carlene is here. She will be reading an excerpt that was written by Valerie Slaughter Bejarano. Here we go.
I'm going to read you first a bit of a poem that she wrote that may not be the best memory that people have of our revered manongs, but it's what she wrote, and she was there. Roseland. I remember the hot light on that hot night, sometime in July, '65, and an acneed blonde in a pink plastic lei, hustling old men and sailors at 50 cents a dance. Things were really hopping at Roseland. Manongs in their faded Al Capone suits did the twist, shuffling across the dance floor. Man, they really had it. Things were hopping, fingers popping at Roseland.
So it really encapsulates
It does.
that vibe of the manongs.
I know.
You know, they worked hard, they played harder.
Well, that's it. You know, people say, why didn't they go to night school or do something? They didn't have night school at 10 o'clock when they were getting home. And they're 17, 18, 19, some of them as old as 30. But what do most teenagers or young men in their 20s do on weekends?
Go out dancing.
Yeah. So they weren't allowed to dance with white women except in these taxi dance halls. Now, this is 1965, so it's not 10 cents a dance anymore. It's 50. But that's inflation for you.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
So here's an excerpt from her Temple Street story.
Yeah. Temple Street in the 1950s was a warm and friendly neighborhood of families and shopkeepers bustling in the post-World War II prosperity of Los Angeles. The war provided some changes for the better. Filipinos were able to slowly merge into the middle class after years of discrimination. Citizenship was offered to young men who served in the armed forces. Filipino brides walked down the aisles of churches dressed in embroidered gowns brought with them from their island homes. Anti-miscegenation laws were dropped in California, making it legal for Pinoys to marry whites or anybody else they wanted. What had started as a bachelor society recruited to work the agricultural industry in Hawaii and California became a close-knit community that no longer had to hide from racist, anti-Asian sentiments. In the 1960s and 70s, the area evolved with the times. The neighborhood changed and grew crowded with newcomers. The new immigrants were more educated and professional.
Wow. It's hard to imagine that just recently, the racism and discrimination against our people.
I would like to tell you something that's kind of harsh, but there was also racism and discrimination from the 1965 group, not everyone, but quite a lot, to separate themselves from what we now call the Manongs, who were uneducated. And so it was doubly harsh.
Yes, discrimination within your own society and your own community. This is something we need to address and need to put a stop to. It still happens today. We'll be right back on Kababayan Today.